Well, good evening. Today is June 13th, 2021, and this is the second forum for the candidates of the Ocean Pines Director election. I'll introduce the Elections Committee. I'm Steve Hamburger, the chairperson. The members of the committee are Mark Heinz, Carol Ludwig, Marianne Whitcomb, and Bob Windsor. Association Secretary Tammy Rogers is our board liaison. The successful candidates in this election will serve until 2024. Many decisions will be made by the board over those years. We asked for questions, and OPA members sure responded. We received many questions. We'll get to as many as we can. The goal of the Elections Committee is to mail the ballots to eligible voters this week, hopefully Thursday, no later than Friday, and they must be received either in the Berlin post office or in the box that is located in the lobby of the police department by 4 p.m. on Wednesday, August 11th. We received this mailing for the referendum. It was received on the 3rd of June. The deadline for the ballots was May 13th. And on the back, the property owner wrote, they did not receive the ballot until May 14th, the day after it was due back. So it took a month for these folks, whoever they are, to get their ballot. So please don't expect the post office to be your friend on this thing. This year, our candidates in ballot order are Frank Daly, Stuart Lackerney, David Hardy, and Rick Farr. Stuart and Rick have declined to participate in this forum. Each candidate will have 3 minutes for an opening statement. Following the statements, we will ask a number of questions on topics of interest to association members. Mark Heinz is our timer for this evening. He'll display a timer for the candidates and issue a 30-second warning as their time winds down. All candidates will be able to answer every question. At the end of the forum, each candidate will have 3 minutes for a closing statement, and that will be done in reverse ballot order. Mr. Daly, you ready for your opening statement, sir? The floor is yours. But would you take that podium? Josh is going to be focused on that podium. I appreciate its offer.
Good evening. My name is Frank Daly. My wife Irene and I moved to Ocean Pines in 2013 and are involved in many community organizations. I was elected to the board in August 2018. Prior to founding my own company in 2009, I served as a VP and division manager of 2 firms and on the executive management committee of 4 companies. I have a MS degree in engineering, a MBA in finance, and attended the board and executive development program. When I ran for the board 3 years ago, this association was in serious trouble. Staggering losses in our operations exceeded $1.6 million. An active criminal investigation was underway, and an audit indicated that we had weak, ineffectual business practices. 2 former board members leveled charges of fraud, theft, and corruption, and we were in the early stages of a $250,000 forensic audit. During this period, 13 staff employees resigned, retired, or were terminated. 4-3 votes on the board were common. Our homeowners and employees lost confidence and did not trust the ability of the board and management to manage this association. Things have changed pretty dramatically since 2018, and we have progressed too far from the acrimony and losses created by a board of 4 like-minded individuals to return to the dark days of the Red Hill era. I have used my experience and conservative financial approach with 3 different boards to improve the management of this association and keep your assessments low and stable. During this period, your assessment has increased by $10. We have rebuilt aging facilities, repaid $2.1 million in losses from the Hill Bailey era, strengthened homeowner protections and value, improved our amenities, introduced Comcast to the community, and made major strides in improving our infrastructure. And let's not forget, we also managed our way through a once-in-a-lifetime pandemic. Staff retention and morale has been outstanding. Last year, 4 employees left, 1 due to death, 1 due to retirement, 2 for other opportunities. Other candidates get their marching order from a special interest political action group. I do not. My marching orders come from the 8,452 homeowners that comprise this association. My core values are honesty, integrity, independence, and I focus my efforts not on special interest, but on yours, the homeowner. I'm asking for your vote to continue my work to improve the core values of this community, our finances, its management, and our infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. David?
I'm told to look at the camera.
Okay.
I'm David Hardy. I have no agenda. I am an individual who is.
Speaking of folk, yeah,
I'm David Hardy. I have no agenda. I've been told I'm relatively new to the Ocean Pines community. A brief review of my background. I am a materials engineer, wherever that's supposed to be. Being that I have a ceramics degree from the State University of New York, outside of Cape Corning, New York, where I grew up. I then did graduate work at Penn State, at the University of Rhode Island, and at Rutgers University, and received degrees from each of those organizations. I've been in private industry, I've been in the military, I've been working for the federal civilian government, and I've been a volunteer in my community no matter where I've gone. If you look at the types of work I have done, I enlisted in 1974 during the Vietnam War, and then was told I was a linguist. So I went to Presidio Monterey and learned Italian and served initially in the Europe environment, taking care of the weapons that were given to the Army and services at that time, which now no longer exist. And it's interesting. Today I work for the U.S. Army as a civilian, and I'm looking at sensors with detect those same kind of weapons. So it's an interesting circle of life. And in the middle, I worked in private industry. I was part of 5 startups. I helped take 3 of them to IPOs. I've been everything from a chemist to a scientist to a process and manufacturing engineer. In other words, I have had a very varied background. I've been a homeowner, a father, a grandfather now with 5 wonderful grandkids. I've lived my life and I've proven myself capable of taking on new opportunities, new responsibilities, and being very successful in doing those things. As I said, I really don't have an agenda here. I've heard many different both complaints and compliments about the current functioning of the Ocean Pines community. We have full-time residents, we have part-time residents, we have people that buy homes to rent, and all want to just own their property, be able to be responsible for their property and live their lives and enjoy what they have. My goal is to continue to make that possible, to continue to keep our HOA fees low and affordable, which compared to some other communities, they are. I thank you for considering me and for even allowing me to be here. And I look forward to this particular question forum. And first question, please.
Thank you, guys. Stay right there. We're just going to alternate between the 2 of you, okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
So, the Worcester County Bike Coalition has been working to improve available biking trails across the county. OPA has 2 long walking trails that are presently under-maintained and consequently are underutilized. Would you support an effort to rehabilitate these paths and convert them into trails suitable for regular bike use?
Well, as an individual, I look at every amenity that's available that Ocean Pines can offer. Of course, there's a function of affordability, what is necessary to upgrade it to whatever standard. I'll be the first to admit, I don't know what standard we want to bring these walking trails to, and if they didn't want to get turned into bike trails initially, again, what would be necessary to have that happen? I'm not going to give the politically correct answer saying, well, we'll take it to a consultant or we'll take it and study the item. Personally, I love having opportunities to walk my 4-footed friends, and I would be an advocate to have opportunity to have safe paths through which I could take walks and take my animals on their daily constitutions. On the other hand, it's affordability too. What will it cost coming out of the various funds that we have set aside for either, if it is a capital, which I doubt it would be capital, but again, it is an expense. Every homeowner thus is impacted in some way, and that needs to be determined before anyone makes a final decision. Thank you.
Right, good question again?
Nope.
Okay.
No, I would certainly support looking at the idea of upgrading the trails to bike trails. But I think, as everybody's aware, that involves kind of a complicated process. The first thing we have to do is find out exactly how we want to upgrade them. Do we want those trails paved? If we want those trails paved, how much is that going to cost? And once we find out what that costs, what the threshold is. If we're under $1 million, that's something that we can consider at the board level. If it's over $1 million, we go to referendum throughout the community. But it's certainly something that we would consider doing, especially when you consider that as the demographics switch in this community, we're going to get more full-time people living here. As we get more full-time people living here, it becomes slightly more difficult and dangerous to ride on our streets. And the first thing we want for our bikers and everybody in this community is for people to be safe.
You're first up. There are concerns among community members regarding the open burning of wood in backyard fire pits throughout OPA. While all OPA DRs specifically prohibit outdoor burning of wood, leaves, etc., fire pits were recently granted an exemption. As an environmental issue as well as potential fire safety concern, would you support the banning of wood-burning fire pits in Ocean Pines?
I would support changing the declaration of restrictions to either permit fire burning fire pits in Ocean Pines or support the enforcement of the existing declaration of restrictions. I think we're in a situation there. A declaration of restriction cannot be changed by the board or by the architectural review committee. And if we have if we've made a ruling where we're overruling the declaration of restrictions, we are doing something fundamentally wrong. And it's something that can be challenged in court and we lose. But if somebody wants a fire pit, I mean, I have a fire pit out on my deck, it happens to be propane, they should be able to do that. But that's something where we should follow the rules, whether we like them or not. And the rules currently say no wood burning in Ocean Pines.
Thank you, Frank. Good.
Well, obviously, this is something that I would need to learn more about. From the simple perspective of having a real, true fire pit, and you're not trying to clear land, burning in a small, confined space in a safe manner is something that, as a homeowner in other parts of the country, I've always wanted to have the opportunity to do. However, often enough, like I've lived many times in more rural environments, and under the premise of fire pits, I've had neighbors actually burn their garbage, burn their leaves, and actually start to clear their property. That is if that is the case, and which instigated this kind of question, obviously that's something that, as an association, we should step in, and if we don't have bylaws which in some way inhibit that, ensure that, or if we do, make sure that they're enforced, and look at ways to protect our environment, protect our property, because we don't want to have any issues develop which actually endanger the safety of our residents. So again, I don't know whether you will allow, as you said, we have issues right now with burning wood at all. If that's the case, we should follow our own rules, which we have set up for our community. However, we should look at the question, because it's a viable concern that's been raised, see how it impacts the safety of our community, and then make logical decisions from that.
Thank you, sir. Next question. The Little Beach at the Swim and Racket Club is crowded with sunbathers, water dogs, kayakers, and stand-up boarders. However, OPA does not even clean up the debris, replenish the sand, or remove or replace dead trees. one of the two picnic tables was destroyed but not replaced. Do you agree with the Little Beach serves an important function in the community? If so, what would you do to improve the conditions there?
I tried to visit each of the areas within OPA or within the Ocean Pines. I enjoy the little beach that's there at the Munster Landing area. I would like to think the beach that you're referring to would have the same, be treated in much the same manner. It sounds as if it's not. And if that be the case, obviously we need to look at the kinds of budget that needs to be modified to allow the cleanup of that area, and then assign responsibility for that property, part of the property, to assist in maintaining it, and also communicate that need to our residents and those that use that beach. Having some access to water is what this community wants, and I'd like to think that that is one area that we should ensure that the residents have the opportunity to continue to use.
Thank you. Right.
If we have a beach that's not being maintained, that has trash on it, and picnic tables that are broken, that is a situation where it's general manager and his staff should be taking care of that. I mean, at the end of the day, we're all sitting in a $1.5 million facility that we decided to build because the old facility was let to go to sea. It was unusable facility. If we can't maintain a beach, we're not going to be able to maintain a facility. We have to maintain everything in this association in good working order and make sure that that's done on a day-to-day basis. And that's an operations challenge. Now, if somebody tells me as a board member that the beach is trashed, picnic table's broken, and things are in disrepair, what I'm going to do is go to the general manager and send him an email and a text, along with the director of public works, and say, we have this situation and it needs your immediate attention. And that's their job to follow up and do that and take care of it. And by the way, they will. But I'm kind of surprised that that's the situation. And now that I know about it, I have another text to send tomorrow.
Don't go far. As a director, how would you support the separation of responsibilities between the board and the OPA staff? Are there any improvements you could suggest?
Actually, I think the responsibilities are clearly defined. The general manager is the chief operating officer of this association. They're responsible for the day-to-day operation, for making sure all of our facilities are in good working order, and for making sure that we are financially sound and run in a business-like manner. The board of directors' job is to establish the policies and objectives for the operations team to successfully complete. And we do that, and it's well defined. And where we run into problems is when one side, be it the staff or the GM, gets in board's business, or the board gets in the GM's business. And that is clearly defined in the bylaws, and that shouldn't be done. We should hold them accountable for the goals that we set, and we have procedures in place to do that. And there's no need for us to be involved in the day-to-day operation. Now, having said that, I want to make it clear to everybody. The Eastern Shore and Ocean Pines has, particularly when he deals with properties, it's a complaint-driven system. If you don't say something, chances are nothing will get done. If you say something, it's acted upon quickly. So part of that responsibility not rests with the board, but actually rests with the citizens to report things that they see. And if the citizens want to gradually move us from a complaints-driven system to a proactive system of enforcing our DRs, we can do that. But right now, community-wide, there's no sense to do that. And the operations role is clearly defined, as is the board.
Thank you, Frank. David?
Well, the question you pose is not unlike what we all face as managers within private industry, or in the military, or in government service. There are government employees, you hire a lot of contractors, or you're management and you hire a lot of employees, or you're in the command structure and you have a lot of soldiers, and yes, they work for you, but they also work for their own management. You don't tell them, I don't go outside of that chain and tell them what to do. I can know them, I can be friendly with them. I don't have relationships with them in the sense beyond which would be appropriate. And especially in the positions that I serve in right now, I have a lot of contractors working around me. I would presume that would be similar to the OPA staff. They work for the general manager. And I would be going to the general manager or my fellow board members. We'd be having a discussion to decide what's going to be appropriate to give guidance or recommendations or requests, depending upon the situation. And I agree, to be aware, we have to be aware of the situation first. And so for that to happen, the community, individuals within the staff need to advise us of any concerns first so that we can respond. Thank you.
Going.
We need some more people here.
In your opinion, what is working well in Ocean Palms? What would you brag on, given a chance?
Well, I will say thank you to whoever's been managing our money up to this point. I've been a homeowner just over 3 years. My HOA fee hasn't gone up. I have had my spouse lived in Hartford County, and she was paying hundreds of dollars a month to their HOA, and it went up every year. So that's working well. I went to pools. I go to the marina. I've never been. Okay, this is the third time in my life I've been in this building. It's a beautiful building. Thank you very much for having built it. I think the amenities are wonderful. I enjoy the beach. I enjoy the boating. It's all seems to be functional. Yes, you got to pay to go to swim. Okay, if I lived in my other communities, you pay to go to a public pool. So I would say our amenities are working. The Ocean Pines owned property is in good shape, and most of the homes I look at also are well maintained. Therefore, I would say that there's pride in ownership by our homeowners as well. So thank you.
Okay.
Well, actually, right now, Ocean Pines is in really good shape. I mean, we're consistently one of the safest communities in Maryland. And one of the things I learned when I was doing a CPR course for one of my grandchildren, we have a 6-minute or less response time from the EMTs from the South Fire Station at any point in Ocean Pines. So fire, police, safety, top flight. We're in great financial shape. Our fees, the HOA fees are low. Our amenities are in good working order. We offer quality service. And actually, over the last 3 years, we've been able to transcend and go from major problems of buildings that we could not use, like where we're standing right now, to everything in good working order, to now where we're dealing, quite frankly, with lower level problems that aren't as intense as buildings falling down. And that's a good place to be, because I like the discussion, not whether or not our facilities are good, not whether or not you can get good food at the yacht club, not whether or not, we're gonna raise the assessment $100, because none of that's gonna happen. Everything's in good working order. What we're not talking about is let's beautify the north gate, let's beautify the south gate. And that's pretty good shape to be in for a community when you think about it. And that's exactly where we want to stay. To continue to get better and keep eating away at the problems that have bothered us over time until we drive down to the lowest possible level and have this community be the best it absolutely can be.
Thank you. Good way. Now, each of the candidates may ask a question of another candidate. The question is not timed, but the answer will be limited to 2 minutes. Right?
I guess the question I'd ask David is, since you are a newcomer to, I want to call it political scene, you haven't been on a committee, you haven't been on the board, how do you intend to bring yourself up to speed with the important issues that the community is facing?
Well, as I tried to cover in even my introductory remark, yes, I'm a newcomer. I mean, it's 3 years as a newcomer. I've been in positions where I've been tasked assignments which I had no clue how to do. I had to go from being a process engineer on a microelectronics line to a plating engineer for flexible heaters one time. I knew nothing about the plating industry. I learned very quickly. My background is one where I have demonstrated in my life the ability to be versatile. I'm technically competent. I know how to read and review documents. I have the ability, as probably most of us do, I still have my memory. I can retain information. And although my wife makes a difference sometimes.
A little too close for comfort.
And my only deficit that I'll admit to right now is because I don't know everything. Okay. And I don't hear everything because I was in the artillery a long time, so I'll ask, could you say that again? But on the other hand, I think bringing a new perspective in is a good thing. Again, I've been part of other town boards. I have managed major government programs with budgets well in excess of what our overall budget is. Doesn't mean that I will need my fellow board members to answer the questions many times. But I believe that I bring in I represent an individual that has no agenda and wants to do something for his community. So thank you. I gotta stand up here.
Do you have a question for Frank?
Sure. What has surprised me since my wife said, well, if you have some complaints, you should run for the board. For a volunteer organization to do the best that you can, I've come to be quite aware of many of the personality issues that have actually adversely impacted the functioning of the board. Could you give me some of your perspective and how we go forward from there?
2 minutes, okay. So each year the board changes members, and it's either changes 2 or 3 members, and that brings a new set of personalities on board. And this is the 3rd board that I've been on, and each one has had a different characteristic in terms of people interacting with people and personalities. I think the trick to getting things done for the community is to focus on the issues and not who brings the issues to the table. You know, in industry, they refer to it as check your ego at the door. But once you focus on issues and be willing to address the issue, rather than to discount it or accept it based on the person that brings the issue, you're the first base. The second base is to be able to work with people that have different personalities and different views on that issue, to come together and collaborate to make a solution that makes sense for the community. Quite frankly, we'll talk about short-term rentals. I will guarantee you that Director Janasek and I do not agree. But the fact of the matter is, when he talks with me, I listen to him, and I hope he listens to me, because he brings something to the party for me to consider in forming a solution that will help every member of this community. And that's how you work it. You put the personalities aside, focus on the issue, listen to what people say about how the issue should be solved in a collaborative manner, and then you move forward. And by the way, that's how big companies do it. You know, big companies have people that really, at the end of the day, hate each other. But they force to work together and they solve problems and they make progress because they put their differences aside to hit a common objective.
Okay, thank you, Frank. Don't go away. We'll get these guys straight eventually. What is your vision for OPA in 5 years, even beyond the term that you're currently running for today?
Well, you know, I think you go back to look what it was. OPA was supposed to be the premier residential community or whatever it is, resort community on the Eastern Shore. My vision for us 5 years from now is to have everything that we have right now in extremely good operating order, to continue our finances in extremely good order, to have our assessment to continue to be considerably below that of the communities that surround us. Like, for example, the $3,300 at Riddle or $2,100 over at River Run. So keep it safe, keep it affordable, keep it in good working order, keeping all the services that the association delivers to you as a first-rate service, with good customer service. Then we can look at, do we want to expand anything, or do we want to repurpose any amenities as time goes on? Because quite frankly, as time goes on, people change and the needs change, and we'll have to address that. Right now, there's nothing immediately emergent, but there will be a future where we may have to repurpose some things to suit the community at that time.
Thank you, Frank. David?
It's hard to argue with or take any kind of opposing view to what was just stated. I moved into this community because it's safe. I'm moving into this community because it's safe, because it has amenities, things that I and my family love to do. I want that there into the future, beyond 5 years. I don't want us to let things fall into disrepair. You don't put off maintenance, because by putting off maintenance on equipment, structure, grounds, all you end up with is more work in the long run that you have to spend more money on. And I don't want to leave that as a legacy for myself, for the other property owners here in this community. I would like, if someone has other thoughts that they might want to have us invest in, we need to listen. We need to decide whether we can afford it, whether the community really wants to have it, and then push forward with that. Our community is very diverse, very broad spectrum of ages, and we need to accommodate to the best of our ability every single subset of the homeowners that are here, recognizing that we can't satisfy everyone, but at least we can try. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Next question for you, sir. Are you satisfied with the handicap accessibility of OPA facilities? How would you propose to address the shortcomings?
I carry a disability card. I got a disability tag on my truck. I've had issues with my respiratory system. I like the fact that everything is close, parking is close. I like the fact that there's ramps. I believe that we can always do better. The pools could have a greater number of mechanical devices to allow people to have more access, although I see them in the pools. I don't know at all. I'm going to express some ignorance there. If there's other mechanical devices or structures that are needed to assist our disabled part, the more disabled part of our community, again, we need to be aware of it, and we need to address it as a board. And if something needs to be built or installed, we need to look at the cost and put it into our budget as appropriate for our membership, our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
To my knowledge, there's only one facility that we would need to improve the handicapped access to, and that is the beach club bathrooms. When they were remodeled a couple years ago, my understanding is the width going actually into the bathroom itself was too narrow to accommodate the wheelchairs. The current buildings, like this building, are built to current codes, which are absolutely compliant with all the requirements for disabilities. All the other facilities, to the best of my knowledge, meet that. But you know, the concept of the ADA law is if you have a disability and want to use a facility, that you have to make an accommodation for somebody to be able to do that. And if we find that we have a facility where somebody is disabled and we have to make an accommodation, that's one thing that we are obligated to do immediately. But from a facility standpoint, that's the only facility that I'm aware of that is not fully compliant. And by the way, that is the only facility that I'm aware of where I think we will have over the next 5 years capital expenditures to do exterior renovations to seal the envelope and interior renovations to make sure that that facility lasts for another 25 to 30 years. When we do those interior renovations, they will have to be done to code, which will bring them fully compliant with the ADA requirements.
Were you looking at my sheet there, sir?
Yeah.
Here's the next question. What is your long-term view of the beach club property?
Okay. So in the interest of full disclosure, I did hear mention at the last forum that the next board may be looking at replacing the beach club. So I've talked with 2 separate general contractors, and both are of the opinion to get the permitting done to replace that beach club, to replace it, would be a $1 million proposition before you broke ground. Okay, I think it is in the absolute best interest of this association to take the facility that we have, which is a very usable facility, and extend its life by doing the exterior renovations to seal the envelope and by doing the interior renovations. And by the way, 2 years ago, we did exterior renovations. If you're not aware of it, when I first joined the board, Ralph DeAngelis walked me into the beach club, and he pointed out that all the windows were leaking, and he couldn't lock the doors. And the Ocean City Police Department had to come every 15 minutes to check when it was open to make sure people weren't pirating our supplies. We took care of that, okay, with the $200,000 plus expenditure. By spending probably an equal amount to make sure the roof and the siding is weather tight, we can guarantee a 25 to 30 year lifespan on that facility. And by doing interior renovations, we can equal that 25 to 30 years of useful use for this community. And we can do that probably in total for under $500,000.
David?
Well, I can't argue with what was just stated. You don't replace a building just because you want to replace a building. You have to maintain the building. I understand that such concerns were not addressed necessarily as they should have been for this facility, for the alcove. However, for the beach club, so now we have brand new buildings. For the beach club, my understanding by talking to some board members and some other residents, we have been investing in the beach club property. And yes, it does, and I agree with Steve about accessibility to the lavatories in the bottom floor there. They need probably some modification for handicap, better handicap access. However, by putting work into the existing structure, my understanding is that you'll now have a building that eventually, 20 years from now, we'll need to talk about replacement. Until that time, though, you have an excellent facility that gives a beach experience to those that go there, that offers the amenities that you expect at that type of clubhouse. And that with the beach and with the pool is a gem for our community. So if that answers, hopefully that answers the question. I believe that money should be spent to maintain it. But there's, at this time, as I'm led to believe, there's no reason to replace it. Thank you.
Thank you, David. The breadth and the diversity of the questions that the members of the association have submitted are very impressive to us, and we have difficulty selecting those that we're going to be able to have time to answer here, but just to show a big shift. Much of the mail we receive is junk mail. Would it be possible to include recycling bins at the sites of the warehouses? Okay. Mailboxes.
Who's gonna pick it up?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Are you asking a question about recycling? Are you asking about bins at the
Well, put
mailboxes?
recycling bins by the mailboxes where we get a lot
Of course, we have a question on the table at the previous forum about replacing those mailboxes or upgrading those structures. It costs money to pick things up. It has to be maintained. I pay money to have my trash picked up. I would presume Ocean Pines would have to do the same. It's not trash, it's recycled. What happens if they use as trash bins? You have to be careful when you, yes, we want to have people, if the community wants to have it, we need to consider it, we need to discuss it, and if that's really something that we can afford, I think that it's not a bad thing to do. I was part of the Department of Energy, part of renewable, recyclable. I mean, that was a big part of my life, up until I joined and started working for the Department of the Army again. So I'm a avid supporter of green, but on the other hand, you have to be careful how much money you're going to spend and make the plans so that they accommodate all the needs that additional, I'll use the term in air quotes, amenity will bring to us. So, thank you.
Thank you.
I would actually be reluctant to put recycling by the mailboxes, and I'll give you the reasons why. Number one, right now today, recycling is done by the county. And we have a recycling station at the South Fire Station. And if you go there and look around the recycling bins, I don't think you want your mailboxes to be in the same condition. That's number one. Number two, I think a far easier approach if somebody's so concerned that they're overwhelmed with junk mail is there are ways to address that issue with the postmaster to have them cease delivering junk mail to your mailbox. That would be my first choice in doing it. If I was absolutely forced to, would I do it? Yeah, but it would have to be it would require the county to pull out of recycling and our people to be overwhelmed. When I say overwhelmed to the point where we would have to add another department in Public Works responsible for doing right now what the county is doing. And that's a big expenditure, and quite frankly, I don't see an appetite for it anywhere on the existing board and anywhere in the community.
Thank you, Frank. Frank.
It's the heat of the kitchen's getting to me.
Yeah. Do you have any ideas on how Ocean Pines can improve the enforcement of property regulations?
Yes, I do. So happens to be something I've been working on for 3 years. Look, we at the last board meeting passed a resolution which means we will be asking the homeowners in each section, with the exception of 5 sections, which I forget right now, but they're post-Boise sections, to amend the declaration of restrictions to regulate short-term rentals. And it's been a very narrow path that we've had to walk because the instructions from both the board and the community have been very, very specific. And that is, we do not want to put regulations and restrictions on property above those that currently exist today by law. But we do want to be able to address problem properties. And the way that we've decided to do that, and the best course of action by talking with all the stakeholders in the county, people in the association, and our attorneys, is to take the county laws and put them in our declaration of restrictions and ask for the power to fine for violations. And we will be issuing, the current board will be issuing a statement because we just met and had some concepts on how to enforce that. So that is forthcoming immediately. And that's the first step. Down the road, there's some discussion, whether or not we'll get past the discussion stage, for at least noise and litter to maybe extend that out further than short-term rentals. But at this point, it's just in early discussions. Right now, the focus is short-term rentals and the ability to regulate and deal with bad properties.
Thank you, Mike. David?
I would believe, driving around the community, I see homeowners maintaining their property. I know that there's in every community, I'll take the worst examples that I've ever seen around university environments, where the proverbial slumlords rent double the number of students to a building than it's authorized by local code. Those buildings never are maintained, we know who they always were, and you try, you find, you do what you can to maintain and protect the safety of that community. Well, the same thing obviously is true here. The first question I would ask though is, who's going to go around the community and determine if you're making too much noise, you have too much garbage? Are we gonna, we gotta be careful because we all own our property, we like to think that we're maintaining our property. We don't want to think that someone's looking over our shoulder. We probably had some discussion on short-term rentals. I think that the county laws are there and should be complied with. And if they're not, someone needs to take action to address those homeowners that are not in compliance. It's a matter of safety for the community. If someone's leaving their home in disrepair, that's a matter of aesthetics, yes. It's not a matter of safety. My question will always be, who's going to determine that a homeowner has violated those particular aspects of the way we want our community to look, to be, to sound? Parking can be a problem, noise can be a problem, it can be a problem anywhere. So it is always going to be something that we're going to deal with. I hope that the board can come up with a viable approach to at least address it. It's going to be a tough fix. Thank you.
David?
I told you, hearing, artillery, 8-inch guns.
The Strategic Planning Committee is working towards a new planning document to help guide the association over the next 3 to 5 years. What are your biggest priorities for a new strategic plan?
I would like to say again, as I've said before, that the strategic plan looks at the existing Ocean Pines assets and real estate, and the strategic plan ensures that we maintain what we have at minimum standard to what we have today. That we look into ensuring that we maintain capital funds so that when the time comes to replace items that are on the capital asset list, that they can be replaced with no adverse impact to the property owners. I'd like to think that we maintain our buildings in a manner which make them consumer friendly. I mean, we have to be open to the public. We charge appropriate fees for their use. And I would like to think that that document looks at how many, how we manage our employees in the long run, how we manage our staff, and again, support this community so that we continue to be proud of what we have and continues to be the gem that it is in the Delmarva Peninsula. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Right.
In light that we have 2 minutes, I'll try to make this short. So I come from private industry, and 5 years ago, I was on a strategic planning committee and named the head. And the first thing that I figured out is here's the difference between our strategic planning and corporate strategic planning. In the corporate strategic planning, the operating team is responsible for developing that plan, for developing the metrics and presenting that to the board for approval. We had a process where the committee was developing the plan and handing it to operations and telling you should do this. That won't work. It doesn't work in private industry because at the end of the day, if you try to tell the operating team what to do, in our current structure, the operating team will resist, they will say no, and they won't do it, and there's no way for a board advisory committee to force the operations to implement that plan. So we changed that 5 years ago. And today, we do have a strategic plan that we have to continue to revise, because our general manager today supplies a 5-year plan. When we go through the budget meetings, with the first 3 years to 100%, I think it's 85% and 50%, and the other 2 years, kind of, this is what I'd like to see. When that process gets refined and the operating team owns that plan, we're on our way to big long-term success. Because here's another inconvenient truth about Ocean Pines, folks. The stability of this organization rests with the general manager. The board changes every year and has the possibility of changing majorities every year. If you want something done consistently over time, it has to be developed by the operations team, embraced by them, and implemented by them, and measured by the board.
Thank you, Frank. Frank,
I think I'm ready.
getting this exercise tonight.
I had to take some Advil for the knees, buddy.
The loss of the crabbing pier has meant the loss of a well-used amenity. How did you replace the crabbing pier?
Well, for now, a couple of years, the replacement of the crabbing pier has been given to the operations team to find a location and to present both the location and the cost to the board for approval. The crabbing pier that was eliminated was never fully accepted by the Ocean Pines Association as an amenity. So when the operations team does come up with a location, they do come up with a cost, we have to go through the process of bringing a new amenity on board community-wide. But that is right now resting with the operations team, and the board is waiting to give us the location and give us the cost, and we'll go through the process. By the way, as a disclaimer, because I have a minute left, I want everybody to understand about replacing the crabbing pier. The minute that you're in Ocean Pines and you walk from land like this, up with water like that, through any kind of reeds, you're going to be dealing with the Army Corps of Engineers, the Department of Natural Resources, and a whole bunch of other people that are going to have to break permits. It's not a quick process, and it's not a cheap process, but it's one that we're willing to go through.
Thank you, Frank.
A little bit of deja vu with this question. It's the same question more or less at the last minute, the first one. Again, it's hard to argue with the answer that Frank just gave. Crabbing is good. I don't personally do it, but there's a faction of the community that enjoys going out and trying to catch the dinner or just experience with their kids the thrill of catching a crab. And I'm not in any way would ever want to belittle that, because it's a great experience. I know I did it as a kid. But it's not cheap. It's not a replacement of existing facilities or amenity as I understand it to be. It does impact the waterways. It does mean that the federal government and the state government will get involved. It means consultants will get involved, because you're building a new structure within a waterway. So I would presume, and I'm not going to, at this point would not know how much it would cost. Is it a $500,000 project? Is it a $200,000 project? Is it $1 million project? That is something that have to be determined. And then, as members of the board, we deserve, the individuals that bring that question to us deserve to have the board consider it, and it needs to be considered. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I stand.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's 8 o'clock, and our time envelope was 2 hours, 7 to 9, but we're not going to take the advantage and flog these two candidates for the next hour. We've got enough questions, but it's not fair. We asked about 14 questions at the first forum. I believe we just asked 13 so far. So we're going to ask the candidates to provide their closing statements and wrap it up. I think that's fair. So, gentlemen, in reverse ballot order,
Gentleman Perez.
closing statement, sir, 3 minutes.
I thank you first for listening to me. It's hard to study for this kind of environment because you don't know what the questions are going to be. I had some people and myself try to guess what some of them might be. I actually thought the crab pier question would come again. So thank you for answering it for me. Come, the motive I said before, I don't have an agenda, I don't have a political motive. I would like to participate in my community. I think that I was urged, after making some complaints myself, by my family members to put my application in, and next thing I know, I'm a candidate for the OPA board. I'm glad to do this. I will participate to the fullest extent of my ability. I have the capability to acquire or to recognize the skill sets that I might not have at present and to acquire those skill sets, because although I may not be the know-all and see-all, I know that there's others that I can turn to help me find the answers. And that's always important when you're managing. And that's how I look at what is going to be important here. We need to make decisions that impact all residents of our community. I'm a member of this community. I come in, I offer myself as a candidate for the board, and I hopefully will get elected. If I'm not, I will continue to support this community and participate in another manner. But I am proud that we selected, my family selected, the Ocean Pines environment for us to slowly transition to. I'm ready to transition, and so that's what I believe needs to happen. I need to work with my community, and I thank you for considering me for this position. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll drop it for now. Look, here's the inconvenient truth that I mentioned last time. Candidates run on promises. Incumbents run on their records. In 2018, when I was a candidate, this was my agenda, and I did have an agenda. I promised to keep assessments low, predictable, and stable. Done. I promised to address aging, dilapidated facilities that had suffered for years of neglect. You're sitting one. If you don't believe that this is one, go to the new police headquarters, go to the craft building, go to the refurbished beach club. Okay? I promised to address infrastructure. My first board meeting, we had not done a bulkhead in 2 years. We're now on schedule for bulkheads. Okay? I promised to address the record losses in our amenities. This year, every single amenity, with the possible exception of aquatics, will make a net operating profit. Mission accomplished. Finally, I promised that I'd work harder with the management team to change the culture. My first board meeting, when John Bailey was sitting there, I told him we had a culture of damnable indifference, and I was going to change it to one of operating excellence. We have achieved that. We've achieved that by the financial results that you've seen for the last 3 years, by the record operating profit that we got in the first month of this year, and by the $1.1 million profit that we finished last year with. Okay? I want to say something else too. There's another inconvenient truth going on that really bothers me, and quite frankly, this is the only reason that I ran this time. Okay? There are some in this community that are actively working to return us to the dark days of the Red Hill era. They want to go back to 4-3 board votes. Not on voting what you want, but on voting what they want. Not an agenda based on community values, but an agenda based on acrimony. And I want to just point out, those weren't the good days for the association. And for those of you that lived in this community, I want to remind you, 4 like-minded individuals created the worst chapter in association history. We don't want to go back to that. So here's what I want you to do. I urge you to research each and every candidate running in this election, including me. Research what they've run on, what they've said they're going to do, what they've done. See if they've flip-flopped in order to get your vote. Okay? And then after you've done that research, vote. Now I'm going to ask you for your vote because I've enjoyed your support. I'd like it to continue over the next 3 years. And I'd like to make sure that all the progress that we've accomplished continues into the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. On behalf of Ocean Pines Association, the election committee would like to thank all 4 candidates for volunteering to run for a very important position in the the leadership of this association. I realize now we have here information on the 4 candidates with their contact information on this table here available. It'll be included in the mailing, which you will get soon. We're going to mail it this week, for sure. Thursday, no later than Friday, but it'll be in your mailbox soon. And don't hesitate to vote and put it into the return process. It's your advantage and ours. Your vote is important. We look forward to counting your vote in August and seeing you at the annual meeting on August 14th. Yes, sir.
We have a question? This gentleman did not choose to come here tonight. What was the reason?
The election committee does not speak for candidates. If you have a question for a candidate, I suggest you ask the candidate. All their contact information is here, and it'll be in the mailing.
I mean, there's no conflict as far as what you know?
Did they give a reason to the committee?
We don't speak for candidates.
Well, no, no time speaking, did they call up and say I'm dying?
All citizens. The answer is no.
No.
No, thank you.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our event. Thank you.